Welcome back to Cow Park Bros. Jason and I are fresh out the segment discussing and dissecting the rather absurd response to the Little Mermaid live action trailer. Dog, as long as they nail Under the Sea, I'm gonna be there. No, I won't. No, I won't.
I was gonna say no, bro.
No,
No,
I
you
won't.
ain't.
No, I won't.
You have no reason to go see that movie. Let's stop it, okay?
I mean, I would have to be really, really bored.
Or really drunk.
Or both. Anyways, coming up in segment 2, we're going to be talking about what is the deal with and I feel like we've talked about this to some extent, but the fact that Appalachian State has had 2 insane last minute victories this year has put them in the limelight because they won off of this Hail Mary 32-28 over Troy last Saturday, Jason. And of course, there was pandemonium. And I feel like at this point, reflexively, some fans at these events, they just want to get on the field. They just want to be on TV, right? I mean, we experienced this phenomenon as the Duke Blue Devils have proven to be mortal the last 5 years, right? Is that, storming the field has almost become as ubiquitous as mascots at this point. It's a part of the game or a part of the fan experience. And the biggest issue with that Appalachian State victory is that some people actually got hurt. There were multiple people were injured. There was a few broken bones, as reported from that weekend. So clearly, it's a safety issue. But I don't know that there's a lot that can be done about it. What do you think?
So when I saw this article, again, it's from ABC 13 News, mentions a few broken bones reported after fans stormed the field following App State victory. And you mentioned obviously Duke and whatnot, more specifically to App State. I remember in 2007, most famously in week 1 of the college football season, the App State football team, back when they were still FCS, I believe, actually defeated my team, the University of Michigan, at Michigan, and it was the biggest deal ever at the time. And of course, I'm sure there was field storming a little bit to some degree. It was in Michigan, so maybe not that much. But when I saw this article about a few broken bones, it made me think of only a few. Because you got to think, some of these football stadiums, and I'm not sure how big the Appalachian State is, but some of these football stadiums hold a lot of people. You can always look it up when I'm talking, but I have to imagine App State probably holds at least 50,000 people. But the majority of which are probably students or people who are student adjacent. And you got to think, if it's only a few broken bones, I'll be surprised. But my first thought, or rather my next thought went to, what if a fan dies during one of these events? I'm sure we can point to the UK and all sorts of other events where fans have died because of hooliganism and other things like that. But when it comes to actually storming a field or a court or a field of play, because I don't want to hold it just a football or basketball, but when it comes to storming the field or the court, at some point, and I hate to say this, at some point it's going to happen or somebody's going to die. I'm sure it's happened before. I wasn't able to find anything solid about it happening in the States. Maybe I missed it. But it's going to happen. And my next question went to, from a college perspective, why is it that colleges still allow this to happen? Just from the aspect of, obviously, we're a very litigious society here in the United States. Some states and areas more than others. Shout out to Southern Illinois, Madison County. At one point was the highest rate of frivolous lawsuits. Not to say that somebody dies during one of these storm chasing things that would be frivolous. Probably not, because somebody's dead. Because they wanted to celebrate with a team. Now, I've never been part of a storm chasing event, or rather a court storming event in person. So I can imagine the adrenaline rush you get from your team getting a huge upset on their home court. I get that. But I'm talking about from the college perspective. We've seen sites to where on the college fields there are fans tearing down the goalposts. which they made adjustments to kind of make that not as easy to do in some places where it's more, you know, retractable where they can lay it down so they can't do that. But being on the field himself, all those people going crazy, basically bum rushing whatever they're doing, basically like a 50,000 person stampede. Imagine that same thing with obviously we don't weigh as much, so imagine the same thing with animals. It's kind of a crazy scene, right? If another human being was in the mix of that, they're probably gonna get hurt, probably die. Well, this is kind of the same thing. So it's kind of crazy to me that colleges still allow that. When you think about it from the litigious side of things, where if I were to die doing one of these, I'm sure my family or somebody would look into, well, what liability does. Now, I don't want to get too deep in the legal side of things because obviously you and I aren't lawyers, but it's interesting because yeah, the ticket says, hey, you assume the liability or risk when you buy the ticket, so forth and so forth. But could it be argued that if you're allowing, if it's one thing for me to run on the field during the game, I'm sure everybody knows that hey, you do that, you're probably gonna go to jail, get some type of banning from the stadium, and what have you, and that's that. That's during the game. Once the game's over, it's seemingly allowed for that again for schools to do this, allow people to storm the court. So since you're allowing it to happen, should you also have some type of security in place to make sure there is some safety involved? And if you can, how can you do that? What if something happens to somebody in the middle of the field, in the middle of that scrum? You're not gonna be able to get to them. Probably not even gonna know that whatever's happening. Somebody could be laying on the field hurt for hours because no one's really caring, no one really notices. So I just find this kind of interesting, really, to think about in 2022, why colleges still allow this to happen, knowing the potential risk of injury slash potential loss of life when it comes to this. Now, I'm not saying that colleges should ban this, but again, I just find it interesting that they still allow it here in 2022, given the amount of people that these stadiums hold. What are your thoughts on any of that I just said?
Oh, so while you were, running through some of the history and the concerns that are absolutely legitimate, because best believe somebody's getting sued if there is a death in these scenarios, right? It's happening. Will they be successful? That's We're not lawyers, but best believe there would be an attempt.
I know I would.
I was just happened to look up some, and I just happened to stumble upon an article. What is the potential liability for athletic departments as court storming frenzies escalate?
Let's
And there
hear it.
was a situation, and it even rattles off some horrible examples. This one wasn't even this wasn't even college. This was a high school. Uh, high school athlete who, on the day before his 18th birthday, scored a winning dunk against a rival school and then was thrown to the floor during a storming, suffered a stroke and a torn carotid artery. While he has graduated from college, the now 27-year-old is paralyzed on his right side. Um, and I know there's been situations where, there's been like soccer games, for example, where people have been effectively trampled to death. Now, granted, I believe those were in other countries, but it is foolhardy to believe that that can't happen here. I think one one issue is there isn't a universal policy. You know, I think each conference is probably doing their own thing. The SEC, they got their policy on it. The Big Ten, they got their policy on it. ACC, they got their policy on it. So on and so forth. And yeah, NCAA can cut as many promos, and athletic departments can cut as many promos as they want until there's some actual accountability on either the individual. Hell, maybe some people need to say, hey, listen, you show out too much, your ass is not going to be able to show up to a game the rest of the season. I think part of the allure is, number one, it's almost too enticing to not want to try and be on TV. Think about it. All these games are on TV. Hell, it could be roast beef steak. Everybody's got a TV deal now, Jason.
So okay, okay. So hang on. So that goes into a question I was asking you the other day about this when we were talking about it in our meeting. Um, so you mentioned something about couple things. You mentioned something about the money aspect of it because I was saying that the school doesn't make any money off of fans storming the field. And then you mentioned something like what you just said. Directly, they don't, but you said it's good for TV. Is it though? Because I mean, what is there? I mean, what does the school really benefit from storm chasing? Because the whole point of the court storming, excuse me, is the fact that your team just won, and I kind of feel like that's really the more important thing for TV as opposed to the fan storming the field. Versus again the liability risk of something happening, which again, obviously, when it comes to the whole deaths, obviously that number is very low when it comes to happening. So yeah, that might be an assumed risk potentially. But I found other articles that mention when it comes to the liability of it, like you almost have to go into it with the presumption of it's going to happen at some point somewhere in college, whether it be D1, D2, D3, NCAA, whatever spectrum is going to be. With that being said, you have to also be prepared some sort of way, knowing that if it happens on your field, what are you going to do? And I kind of feel like the whole money thing, I don't know. But then also, too, on a separate subject, you also mentioned like what, you didn't use this word exactly, but you mentioned what really is the school going to be able to do about it? Like it can't stop it. Because you said you were hinting like if 100,000 people want to storm the court or field, what are the school going to do about it? You're right. They're not going to be able to have enough security or police presence to force physically the students from storming the court or whoever. Yeah, you're probably not going to be able to do that. Much like the insurrection January 6th, police weren't going to be able to stop that. One, they weren't prepared for it. Two, they probably couldn't, you know. But to that same point, they were still able to find out who was a lot of people who was storming the Capitol building, correct? So with that still same point, okay, you can put out the conference, school, what have you, can put out warnings before the season starts, before the game. Field storming, court storming is not going to be allowed. And here's a punishment for anybody who's caught doing so. If fans still storm the court, guess what? Videotapes, video cameras. There's Johnny from biology class. There's Mickey from PE, whoever. And now you can find out who these people are, and now you can hand out the punishments that you mentioned before, whether it's suspension, whether it's expulsion, whatever it may be, banning from going to the games, whatever. So they can stop it, maybe after the fact, but they can do something about it if they want to. But that's the part that I was kind of throwing out there is why don't they want to? That just seems kind of crazy, just because of the liability risk, and they don't really have anything that they don't, other than having an image that you can put on your social media. I don't see the advantage or the benefit of allowing that to still happen, given the potential risk, whether it's a lawsuit or not. Do you really want the publicity of a student, one of your own students, dying on the field for chasing storming the court, storming the field? It just seems kind of odd to me, a little weird. Is what it is. I agree with you. It's a tradition that might take the extremity of happenings for it to stop. Somebody actually dying. But then it's what's the question going to be is why did it take this happening for it to be banned? Even though you knew it's a possibility and know at some point it's going to happen. I mean, is that fair to say, Terrence, that at some point it's going to happen, right? Is that fair to say?
I don't know if it's fair to say that it's going to happen. I do think that the probability is greater than zero
Because we
because
got to keep in mind too that it's not just even upsets. If a team wins a big game, if Michigan beats Ohio State this year, guess what? Well, I guess it's in Ohio State, so fans are going to storm the field because it's a big game, not because it's an upset, because it's a big game. So it's just want to put that out there real quick. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I think about one. It's difficult to your point. It's difficult to stop preemptively. It's even harder to stop if you're not prepared. And these, you look at the law enforcement presence at they're just not equipped. It's not viable to try and prevent 20,000 people from accessing um accessing an open court like that. I mean, ironically, most people don't actually want to be in that. We're talking about a percentage of that 20,000 that for whatever reason they can't bring themselves but to be in the middle of it.
Fair enough. But also keep in mind that 20,000 number is depending on what we're talking about here. That 20,000 is a small number though as well. Keep in mind a lot of these stadiums are holding a lot more people than 20,000 people.
Oh no, I that's just an example. Uh,
I know, just putting it out there.
I a majority of people don't even want to be. I mean, hell, I'm claustrophobic as hell. I get a little skittish just being at like concerts sometimes because I'm so cognizant of how much space I take up. So I can't imagine like this is not a mosh pit.
I can venture to say it's probably worse because mosh pits are only gonna be how many people?
Yeah, but you know what you're getting into when you go into the mosh pit.
But you also know what you're getting into when you're storming the field in court too.
I'm talking about right, but Jason, I'm talking from the perspective of the players, assistant coaches, other fans that are just minding their damn business. Like um that article I referenced earlier, there was another story where there was a student in a wheelchair. They ended up getting pinned because there were so many students around him. I also think facial recognition may play a part in this down the road
It would have to.
because a lot of folks think that when they're out at like a big event like that they have anonymity.
We are a society that has cameras almost everywhere, intentionally or otherwise.
Yeah, and yet people do dumb shit on camera all the time. I hear you. Yeah, I think it's definitely a concern. I don't have a definitive answer for how to address it. I think a big chunk of it is that the these departments, these conferences, they're making so much money. I think it's a secondary concern.
I agree, but that could be also part of the problem. But also, again, it's interesting though too, because again, like I was saying a minute ago, it's a secondary concern until it needs to become one of their primary ones. Because unfortunately, because somebody's dead,
Yeah, and I hope.
or you know what? That's even the extreme. That's even the extreme. What if it's just somebody who gets paralyzed? Somebody has to lose a limb or something like that. You know, so it doesn't have to be a death. It could be loss of limb, loss of functionality, loss of livelihood, whatever. All those things may carry the potential for one, embarrassment, two, why did this happen, three, hey, I'm getting sued now, you know. So, but again, folks, I'm not saying they should, ban, court or field storming. But again, I just find it highly interesting that colleges still allow this, given the risk of injury, death, whatever, combined with financially, from the financial side of it for a college, getting sued. That's my take on that.
Okay. That concludes our segment on really just the assessment on and the value of court storming in America. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about the Pretrial Fairness Act in Illinois on Cal Park Rose.